A flock of birds whistled through the air as they came over the top of the mountain. It was dark at the moment, and it turned out that the big birds in the air were the feathered clan. The leader of the feathered clan suddenly flew down from the air, a move he made when he spotted his prey. He had fierce and sharp eyes and aimed at his target. Led by him, the feathered tribe all fluttered their gaunt and powerful wings. They flew at the snakes on the ground and grabbed them with their sharp claws. The White Emperor revealed his true form and hissed at the feathered clan in the air. This also reminded all the clansmen in the battle together their courage. The leader of the Snake Clan's face was gloomy when he saw this scene. The primitive Wolf Clan's morale had clearly risen with the addition of the Bird Clan's orcs. However, they had long since lost their momentum and could only order everyone to retreat. They fled in haste into the dense forest. They had failed in this great battle. Sang Knight quickly coiled on the ground and attacked towards Pale and Flea and Ma Qing. It was a chase between Sang Yeo and Ma Qing. Ma Qing directly pulled out his dagger and attacked straight towards Sang Knight. His face turned sinister. He wanted to kill Sang Yi to avenge the death of his men. Just as Sang Yi had just swallowed the minion, Ma Qing had already arrived in front of him. Sang Yi had no time to dodge and could only meet the attack head-on. But he didn't expect Ma Qing's speed to be faster than Sang Yi's imagination. Sang Yi had no chance to fight and was stabbed by Ma Qing's dagger on top of his head. Sang Yi's wail of pain alerted a large flock of crows in the forest. But the main strike caused the serpentine tattoo on Sang Knight's back to wake up, and it was also sending energy to Sang Yeo. The time had come. The serpentine tattoo on Sang Yi's back instantly emitted a purple glow. At this moment, Sang Yi felt an unprecedented abundance of power. The Sand Knight, who had completed his bloodline awakening, his true body became extremely huge. The entire body of the snake shrouded down, causing people to feel numbness behind their backs. It was Sang Yi's tail swing that sent Ma Qing flying several meters and into the river not far away. Ma Qing couldn't react at all. His men all raised their heads in surprise when they saw this scene. Protect Lord Asa Qing. Lord Asa Qing has fallen into the Blackwater River. The voices of his men caught Sang Knight's attention, and an immense black python stood behind them. This caused them to shout in panic. The minions couldn't believe that there was such a big monster behind them. They were so scared that they backed away. Some said they had down scenes of snake beasts left, and these down scenes of snake beasts were not even worth mentioning to Saint Knight. It was only to make Saint Knight full of food. Both Frost Cloud and Bai Dai were watching the movements inside the forest, and Frost Cloud just wanted to go check what was going on inside. He was stopped by the White Emperor behind him. I looked at the contract ring on my hand that was burning in my heart. I was very worried about Bai Dai and the others who were fighting outside. I didn't know what had happened. When I went through the ring and learned that they were in danger of their lives, without saying a word, I got up and rushed out, not listening to anyone's obstruction at all. By this time, I had already walked to the entrance of the cellar and was opening the cellar door bit by bit. I'm going to find Bai Dai and the others. They're in danger. I stepped out and put on my black cloak and walked for it with a determined look. White Emperor, Frost Cloud, Saint Knight. Nothing can happen to any of the three of them. During this battle, I saw the Feather Clan. They were standing in the middle of the battlefield, cleaning up the corpses that remained from the battlefield, and those who were injured. I also saw the Feather Tribe circling in the air. This war should be over. They're Feather Tribe, all of them flying in the direction of going home. Seeing this scene, I covered my face and cried in pain. I really didn't expect that so many people would die in this war, and they were all trying to protect me. Someone was standing on a tree, a man with red wings. His voice made my crying stop abruptly. I turned my head to look at him. Blood Plume stood in the tree with his arms around me, looking at me fondly, and he asked with concern, "Why did I come down the mountain? It's dangerous here." Hearing this, Blood Plume didn't know what to say. He kept looking at me with enchanting eyes, and the corners of his mouth even smiled evilly from time to time. After Blood Plume came down from the tree, he leaned over to my side. He asked me to give him a kiss before he took me. These words shocked me when they came out. When I heard him say this, I really couldn't bear it. "It's already time to say this," Blood Plume said disdainfully. "Then run over there yourself." He wraps his arms around me in a proud gesture, reminding me that if I am any later, there might not even be any mincemeat left. He's still flirting with me at this hour. Blood Plume's request embarrassed me a little. I clenched my teeth and stood in place. Yet my heart was torn as I put up countless resistances. In a flash, Blood Plume took me flying. His speed was very fast. Soon he brought me to the sky above White Emperor and the others. He detected this snake's aura that was very familiar to Bai Dai. This weird boa constrictor was actually someone they had spent so much time with. Looking at this python, Frost Cloud's face turned blue. How did Saint Knight become like this? Now he was more than twice as big. Bai Dai's face instantly looked sad. He really couldn't believe that Sang Yi had not only changed his appearance, but also improved his abilities during this battle. Frosty Cloud saw those corpses on the ground and really couldn't believe it. These couldn't all be made by Sang Knight. Right, the snake beasts were all killed by him. While they were surprised that it was Sangyi's experience, Bai Dai and Frosty Cloud heard a movement in the air, and the two of them looked up into the air with great surprise. When Blood Plume landed on the ground with me in his arms, Bai Dai and Frosty Cloud shouted in unison, "How did I get here?" Bloodline, who was left behind me, had a slightly angry face in his heart. He cursed me, this little guy, sort of throwing him away when he's used up. I also ignored them and directly crossed over from their side to see Sang Knight behind them. I really didn't expect Sang Knight to turn out like this. Looking at this huge python, I was saddened in my heart. Obviously when I came out, I was fine, but now Songyat is injured and turned like this. Hearing my words, Bloodline replied with a firm look in his eyes. A fire demon is a monster that crawls out from the endless abyss. He recounted these things to me. The fire fiend and orc blood. Eating orc meat will absorb the anger. The fire fiend is hell. I don't believe Sangyi is a fire demon at all. But Blood Plume spoke the truth, because the foreign devil bloodline in Sangyi's body was always in a state of slumber. The dagger on Sangyi's head was a dagger polished with foreign devil bones, which could attract the foreign devil bloodline. That's the truth. Blood Plume looked at the blood stains all over the place and said seriously, "There are only a few skeletons left here. Those snake beasts should have been eaten by this guy." Suddenly Blood Plume appeared behind me and held my trembling body. Blood Plume looked at me with an expressionless face. "Are you still sure you want Mulberry Knight now?" These words made me sad, because in my eyes, Sangyi is not some foreign devil. He is just my family. Family that loves each other. No matter what he had become, he was Sonia and my family that I had spent so much time with. After I said those words, I kissed Sangyi's forehead. At this moment, Blood Plume smiled evilly. "Little female, sure you want to do this? The fire demons are dangerous. Your kindness may harm the people here." Without saying a word, Blood Plume reached out and pointed at Sang Knight behind me and kept reminding me that they were all a bunch of extremely destructive maniacs. As the words came out, his face instantly darkened. He put forward his own idea. Why not slaughter him while he is unconscious, to eliminate any future problems forever? Hearing his words, I hurriedly hugged Sang Knight behind me and turned my head to stare at Blood Plume. "If you dare to touch Sang Knight for a second, I'll fight you to the death." My voice, however, made the two of them's hearts tingle. The more I said, the more aggrieved I felt, but my eyes were determined. Tears were shed in order to protect Sang Knight. This scene made Bloodling completely unbelievable. This little guy, actually wanting to lay down his life to protect that foreign devil, just for a family member. When Frost Cloud saw my aggrieved and tearful appearance, he hurriedly came forward to coax me. Well, don't cry, but I couldn't stop my tears from flowing down. I trembled and blocked in front of them, just to make them not allowed to hurt Sang Knight. I pleaded with them. Could they not hurt Song Yue? Bai Dai is going to come forward and wipe the tears from my cheeks. His gentleness overwhelmed me and calmed me down as well. Blood Plume, however, couldn't believe that Bai Dai and the two of them were so unprincipled. The price of letting a foreign demon race go is greater than you can imagine. I stood in the White Emperor's arm's nest and spat out my tongue. We don't need you to be in charge of our family's affairs. These words infuriated Blood Plume and inwardly cursed me. Sang Yi was suspicious by nature and was afraid of being abandoned by those he trusted. As I looked at the current Sang Knight, although huge and terrifying, it had a hint of desolation to it. But Blood Plume had a disdainful look on his face, looking in our direction. You can go and try it out. He Saturday firmly on Sang Yi's body and reached out his hand to grasp the dagger. With a forceful hand, Bai Dai helped Sang Yi pull out the dagger. After pulling out that knife over there, Sang Yi transformed from the huge python to his previous appearance. Seeing Sang Knight after pulling out the knife, Blood Plume couldn't help but sigh. It was really interesting. I didn't realize that Sang Yi had transformed from an alien demon into an Ort. When he learned that Sang Yi had returned to his original form, Blood Plume was not in a position to stay any longer. After he glanced at me, there was nothing more for me to do here either. When Blood Plume flew into the air, I looked up in the direction he left along with Bai Dai. I didn't realize that there were still a few of his feathers scattered in the air. I slowly lowered my head and looked at Sang Knight's position. I looked at the scars on his back and inexplicably felt some bitterness in my heart. After tidying up, I then put the cloak on Sang Knight. I looked at Sang Knight, who was lying on the ground with fond eyes. Sang Knight, let's take you back home. Hearing me say this, Frosty Cloud was surprised, but White Emperor turned his head and skimmed him with a disdainful face. Really, he was speechless. As they were saying these words, they sensed a clamor behind them, and both of them looked in that direction at the same time. It turned out to be Frost Cloud's clan members, who were holding the skin that Sang Knight had molted, and reported to Frost Cloud that they didn't find any trace of the snake beast, and only found the huge snake skin. After that, Frost Cloud transformed into a wolf body, so I Saturday on Frost Cloud's back. Together we walked in the direction of home, and Sang Knight was carried behind by White Emperor. We left Frost Cloud's clan and went home to recuperate. After the big battle, the entire Rockwolf clan went into a state of recuperation. I helped to treat the wounded during the day, boiling and serving them medicines to keep them busy. Sang Yi felt someone beside him and felt warm too. He then slowly woke up. I saw his eyes open. Excited shouted. I helped Sang Yi slowly do up. He covered his sore forehead and thought back to what happened before. His memory was forgotten after chasing Ma Qin. Seeing his appearance, I directly stood up and happily pacified Sang Yi. The most important task for you now is to have a good rest. Suddenly he directly hugged me, which made me surprised and a bit overwhelmed. Right now, Sang Yi's body is still weak. I'll tell him when he gets better. After Bai Dai, Frosty Cloud, and the two of them walked in from outside the cave. They saw this scene and their faces were a bit ugly. I heard their voices and let go of him. He covered his numb mouth and cursed the stinking tiger in his heart. Bai Dai twisted his head to look at Sang Yi. It's good that he's fine. Those snake beasts had disappeared. Sang Knight sensed their desire to speak. Although the temple's people have faded away for now, the crisis still exists. The only way to do that is to become stronger. Bai Dai's eyes were very affectionate. He slowly opened his mouth and told me that seeing me take care of Sang Night like this was very hard on his heart. Hearing those words, I stared at Bai Dai with my cute and adorable eyes. At the moment my heart was beating uncontrollably. Bai Dai lowers his head and looks at me fondly. He dominantly raises his hand to lift my cheek. He also wants me to help him like that, but I'm also shy. In the next second, he kissed me, his strong arm holding my back. His arm slowly tightened. The two of us were in an intimate position. After a long time, he finally let go of me. The knot in his throat rolled, slowed down his mind for a while, and then gently pecked my forehead with great interest. I grabbed his arm with great anxiety. I was being unfair, but Dai noticed my emotions keenly and lowered his head in worry. When my mind was fuzzy and my legs were weak, Bai Dai finally gave up and let go, and their lips slowly parted, snuggling together intimately. Bai Dai sighed helplessly, his eyes full of heartache. He suddenly stopped moving. I looked up at him in confusion. What's wrong? His gaze was as gentle as water, gazing straight at me. His eyes were filled with heavy affection. You're so tired. I shouldn't let you get tired again. After saying this, Bai Dai violently picked me up. Send you back to the bedroom to sleep for a while. I quickly shook my head and refused. I still have to burn dinner later. In the next second, Bai Dai lowered his head and whispered softly in his side ear, I want you to raise your spirits so that it tastes good. My whole body turned scarlet with shyness. Bai Dai hugged me and put me on the lying bed, and also thoughtfully covered the quilt. One second he said he wasn't going to sleep. The next second he was huffing and puffing. He sat on the edge of the bed and raised his hand to gently stroke my hair. Looking at my sleeping face, Bai Dai constantly flashed a thought that he really wanted to monopolize slowly. Bai Dai's eyes flashed, once again gazing over with his head lowered, his eyes glowing with a faint watery color. There seemed to be more than a hint of imperceptible sadness. He lowered himself and dropped a kiss on my forehead. Extremely precious and loving. As long as it makes you happy. No matter what you do is fine. After an unknown amount of time, Frost Cloud suddenly pushed the door in, and again asked softly, Slowly is sleeping. Bai Dai gave a hum and nodded. Frost Cloud slowly came to the front, warningly and vigilantly staring at Bai Dai. Looking at that just now, he thought he was about to mate with Slowly. Bai Dai didn't even raise his head. His eyes stayed glued to me, looking down at the sleeping me with a heartbroken look. He's been too tired lately and needs to rest. I lay on the bed and slept peacefully, and he couldn't help but remember. Again, the scene of our first encounter. The weekend frightened me in the eyes of the White Emperor. Although my appearance was petite and soft, my character was like a tough plant, chasing after the sunlight and trying to grow so hard that people couldn't help but follow it. Before he finished speaking, Bai Dai keenly noticed that Frosty Cloud was pouting and wanted to kiss me. His face immediately grimaced, and I spoke out to stop him. Frost Cloud couldn't help but blush slightly, remembering that I stood up to protect Sang Night today. He was a little bit tarted up in his heart, but they both knew that, no matter who among them is in trouble, I will stand out like this. Because in my eyes, they are all important family members. Bai Dai Saturday on the bed couldn't help but freeze for a moment. Hearing him say these heartfelt words, he couldn't help but purse his lips and smile. Very much in agreement. We are all slow family members. So I curiously walked out. Just as I stepped out of the cave, I saw the fiery red and dazzling wings. It was actually the blood plume opening up. Before the clansman could open his mouth to complain, Blood Plume pushed him away. The feathered man has a beastman injured. We don't have enough medicinal herbs, so we've come to borrow some. or Blood Plume first opened the mouth. He was very arrogant, his face dark and heavy, staring at Sang Night provocation. I did not think that you are so quickly. Well, I see the situation is not good. The Blood Plume eyes are a little dangerous. Hastily find out the herbs too. High in the hands. In this, attempting to try to cover Sang Night, the two of them stared at me speechlessly, holding the herb in their hands for half a day. Too damn, I'm too short. I can't block Bloodline's line of sight at all. Seeing Bloodline lowering his head playfully, I looked very serious and started to drive people away, holding it high in my hand and handing it to him. Here's the herbs. Hurry up and go. Blood Plume reached out and took the herbs. He couldn't help but pinch my cheeks. His face was smiling. I'll come back to play with you some other day. I let go of him in pain. Sanyi has a very cute contrast. He nodded with a good face. I'll listen to you. Look at him like this. Immediately hit my heart. My snake so good. I want to protect him. I want to protect him. Sanyi is really good when he is good. The biggest change in this war is that the relationship between the wolf tribe and the feather tribe has eased a lot, even if the two tribes meet on the road. When I think of this, I can't help but smile in my heart. I brought my basket to the sunflower garden and gently touched them with a gentle hand. As I was talking to the sunflowers, there was a sudden movement behind me. I twisted my head strangely to look, and there was that fiery red wing again. I saw Blood Plume rushing towards me with a smile on his face. When I saw Blood Plume, I didn't have a good face at all. I directly disliked him. As an elder, are you this idle every day? Blood Plume also did not give in, knowing that he himself is an elder, but also used this tone. Is not afraid of him? When the time to go to find the trouble of the wolf clan, I closed my eyes and held back the anger in my heart, and smiled at him with my teeth bared. But the Blood Plume smiled and spread his hands. Is so petty, people. I was angry. Fists are hard. The world, how can there be such a brazen person? Looked at him like strolling in the backyard garden, a face of leisure and relaxation. I heard that the fried sunflower seeds are quite tasty. Even shamelessly told me to taste it. I immediately panicked, immediately reached out in front of the sunflower. Expression serious, reprimanded him. Quickly stop. You ruined my sunflower. But Blood Plume was so relaxed. Didn't he tell you to let me pick it with my own hands? I was immediately rendered speechless. But the Blood Plume is not relentless. To eat fried melon seeds than this fragrant. I was furious and gritted my teeth. So many requests. Why don't you go to heaven? But I didn't expect the next second. Blood Plume suddenly opened his wings and flew violently up to the sky, flaunting with me. Of course he can't go to the sky. See Blood Plume fly away before also did not forget to say, next time remember to fry good. I was angry at the back of the feet, constantly cursing him. Get lost! Soon it was evening. The setting sun gilded the deep mountains with a layer of golden color. I was so angry that my head was smoking, still thinking about what just happened. With a face of indignation, I clenched my fist. Can any of you beat Blood Plume? The three people in the room couldn't help but fall silent when they heard this. Cold sweat slowly sliding down their cheeks. I was still angry and asked, can I beat it? Bai Dai was the first to turn his head. It was a fluke that he was able to win last time. If Blood Plume used his full strength, he would definitely not be a match for Blood Plume. Frosty Cloud also lowered his head and fumbled with his chin. His expression was a bit scornful. He definitely can't beat them alone, but the whole clan together still has some chance of winning. Sang Knight also raised his head and told me with a grim expression, the Blood Plume's strength is unfathomable. No one here is his opponent. Hearing these words, I instantly frowned. See, my face ugly thought, no wonder he is so arrogant. So it is emboldened. I immediately slapped the table and stood up and complained with righteous indignation. Bullying our sunflower, eating our melon seeds without paying, but also frying melon seeds for him. White Emperor heard this. Theridodin lowered his head to appease. Then tomorrow to go and ask for it back for you. But I shook my head firmly. I don't care about the money. I just can't swallow this breath. I just hope it won't appear in front of me. If Whitey goes, that stinking birdman will surely bully him. I can only turn my anger into appetite. I keep on eating big mouthfuls of food. I hurriedly walked up to open the door. Once I saw the person who came, the whole person frowncy. How is it again, Blood Plume? Hastily blocked the doorway. I saw him smiling and saying, the flavor of fried melon seeds is good. Give me some more. I was speechless, looking at his shameless face. Blood Plume heard this, directly turned around. You still have a lot of sunflowers in the vegetable field. I immediately panicked and shouted, do not spoil my vegetable field. Blood Plume suddenly raised his hand and took out something. I won't eat your food for nothing, so I'll give you this as a gift in return. The thing looked like a small green bean, with shoots sprouting from the top of it. Blood Plume stood at a distance holding his arms, then patiently opened his mouth to explain. It's called the half-branched lotus. When it grows up it can blossom, and many females like it very much. I pinched the small seed in my fingertips and looked at it in the sunlight, and asked with great curiosity, how should I plant this? When Blood Plume heard this, his entire face darkened, and he was silent for a while. Give it a drop of blood and throw it into the pond, and it will grow up on its own. Back to the house, I immediately find out the flowers and plants of the ancient books, sitting at the table and constantly looking for access to the I tilted my head and looked at it with big eyes, puzzled. How come there is no information about the half-branch lotus in this parchment book? However, when asked this sentence, Little A rejected it outright. The house authority is not enough. The system is unable to answer. I sat her down on the bed angrily. I lowered my head in surprise and looked at the seed, watching it gradually change, and was pleasantly surprised. Then Saturday on the edge of the pond, staring at a small bud, couldn't help but murmur, looks so much like a lotus flower. Don't know if there is a lotus root. I didn't realize that as soon as the words left my mouth, many lotus roots suddenly erupted from the pond, all at once smashed in my feet. I was dumbfounded sitting on the bank of the stone, surprised to look at the lotus root. This is what happened. I was shocked when I looked up and saw that the half-branched lotus root was shaking its head towards the bank, as if it wanted to get close to me. I quickly reached out my hand, and the lotus immediately tilted its head and rubbed against the back of my hand. Inside, very shocked, could not help but praise it. This is too good, and the bud was so soft and tender. I held the lotus root in my arms, curious to ask the half-lotus, "This lotus root are you give me?" In my heart, I thought, lotus flowers can become a spirit. Hearing this, the lotus opened its petals happily and spoke directly. "Andy likes it. It's all for you." Looking at the half-lotus that can't speak human language, I was very surprised in my heart. "You can actually talk, and also call me Eddie?" See, the lotus flower nodded. The next second, Blood Plume flew to the pond. Seeing the scene in front of him, he quickly understood. "Is this a gift from Half-Branch Lotus to you?" He flew into the air and lowered his head. With a gentle face, he smiled at me. "It seems that you guys are getting along very well." When the Half-Branch Lotus saw him, each petal was manifest in its joy, constantly shouting with excitement, "Abba, Abba." At this time, I finally realized that something was wrong. Seriously raised his head and asked, "How can this half-branch lotus call me my mother, and also call you dad?" Blood Plume laughed softly and slowly told the truth. The half-branch lotus is a rare species. It will evolve from a plant into a human form. Before it was born, whoever drank blood for it is its parent. And before I gave it to you, I gave it a drop of blood first. After hearing the whole story, I was furious and stood up violently, shouting angrily, "You did it on purpose." I forced a smile on my face and smiled at Half Lily, stroking its head in a soothing manner. The half-branched lotus happily turned back and swam towards the middle of the pond. It was Anyang's little good boy. I watched speechlessly as it swam away. In order to blast this damn bird away, directly at him to throw out a bag of melon seeds. I face-ugly roar at him. "Don't come again." The Blood Plume sharply reached out to catch. Before leaving, also owed a beating, said, "After giving birth to a child, do not recognize people. Really ruthless." I raised my head and kept cursing in my heart. This guy is so handsome, but so shameless. Every day, apart from molesting me, he just dabbles in food and drink. Soon it was the day of the market stalls. The beasts gathered here, very noisy and lively. Soon, the stall I set up was swept away and instantly became bare. I didn't realize that the orcs also like to get high on melon seeds. Suddenly someone gently knocked on the table. I twisted my head in confusion. The Blood Plume, but some dissatisfaction, pouted. "At least I am also the father of the child. You do not leave a packet." I shyly reprimanded, "Do not talk nonsense." But I didn't think that. Behind me suddenly came an eerie questioning. I turned my head with a vegetable face and looked at the person who came. This situation is bad. Surprisingly, it was Frosty Cloud who came, only to see him frowning fiercely, with an angry face, asking, "When did I have a child with you?" I quickly and anxiously pacify Frost Clouds. "First, do not be anxious, Anon." But Blood Plume is still on the sidelines to add fuel to the fire. "Anyway, our children have already grown up." Frosty Cloud couldn't calm down at all and shouted angrily at him with an indignant face, "What the hell? When did slowly give you a child?" Blood Plume looked unprecedentedly arrogant, directly reached out his hand and summoned the half-branch lotus. "Why don't you come and see our child with your own eyes?" I could only slowly and honestly tell Frosty Cloud the whole story. After listening to the story, Frosty Cloud's wolf ears dropped down and he was very unhappy, saying, "If you have a child in your belly, will it be mine?" I quickly coaxed him and couldn't stop nodding my head. "It's yours. It's yours." Frosty Cloud's mood immediately changed from cloudy to sunny, and he was happy. He was very dejected and stuck his waist in place. Still Slow loved me the most. Blood Plume looked at the two people in front of him, silent for a long time. Finally, Steel opened his wings. He turned around and prepared to leave, but also did not forget to mouth, "First take our son back. You also quickly come back." But when Bloodlane heard this, he just coldly glanced back at him and thought, "Doesn't it have anything to do with me? That's not for sure in the end." But soon he waved his wings and flew away with the city sun.